A lot has been made about how the championship may or may not be won this weekend. Do you have any concerns that it may not be won fairly?
I'm here to do the best job I can with this incredible team. And going back to again, just we never thought that we would be neck and neck going into the last race.
We come to chapter 22 and the chance for Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton to be the writer of their own story. Each has one hand on the championship. Lapped cars to overtake the safety car.
And it's ending. And it's ending. Wow!
Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen side by side.
This has been manipulated, man.
The 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was the culmination of an incredibly tense, season-long battle between the then-young Max Verstappen, looking for his first championship, and the 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton, looking to secure his 8th. These two came to the last race dead even on points, and so the question was clear. Would Lewis keep his crown, or would Verstappen end the Hamilton era and start something new? To fully understand why this race was so important, first we need some background. In the time since turbo hybrid engines had been introduced to the start of the 2021 season, Lewis Hamilton had been dominating the sport to a boring degree. Lewis had mainly been fighting against first his teammate,
And it's Nico Rosberg and Hamilton's onto the grass and Hamilton's had a massive crash and he's crashed into his teammate.
who actually managed to take a title off him in 2016. Good job, bro. And then Sebastian Vettel on Ferrari. And then nobody. Seriously, if we wanted to listen to Crofty announce all of his wins, we'd be here for hours. So all of this is happening. A young Max Verstappen at the age of 18 hops into Red Bull in 2016 and immediately stole Daniel Kvyat's F1 seat, his girlfriend / baby mama, and won his first race with the team, becoming the youngest driver to ever win a race. It was clear Max had talent, and while Mercedes were dominating, Max was learning and growing. He transformed from a hard-charging, sometimes impulsive teenager into a consistent powerhouse in the sport. Along the way, he captured many fans' hearts for his no-bullshit communication style and his eagerness to get out there and go. I mean, you could tell this guy likes racing. The 2021 season was also special because it was the sunset season for the regulations introduced in 2018. These cars were large, aerodynamically complicated, single-lap monsters that had a lot of trouble in dirty air. After this season, a shift to ground effect in order to focus on less dirty air would be followed. And when the technical regulations changed this much, not even Mercedes being okay in 2022 was guaranteed. Mercedes' dominance was going to be in question after this season, no doubt. But if Lewis could win, he would have won the most drivers' championships, putting him one over Schumacher, which, in my opinion, would have made him the undisputed GOAT. So this was effectively Lewis's championship to lose, and it could have been his last shot at grabbing that 8th title. All the while in the background, Red Bull and Max have been steadily creeping up, giving their young gun a shot. Now already things are tense before the season even starts. So from the first race in Bahrain, it was clear that this season was going to be different. Max nabbed pole in qualifying, and he would lead the race until he got undercut by Lewis on lap 18. By lap 51 out of 56, Max was right back on his tail, and by lap 53, Max had overtaken Lewis for the lead.
By the time they get to the corner, he's about a third of a car in front. By the time they get out of the corner, he's a whole car in front.
But wait.
Bruh.
He went 4 wheels off the track. Honestly, this line was not that uncommon to take and not penalized in the race previously. I mean, as you can see, I'm going to put some Lewis Hamilton clips here. I mean, whatever. Rules are rules, and Max had to give the position back, so Lewis wins, and Max finishes second, but now we know the fight is on, and this season is going to be different than the others. The pair would then trade wins until Azerbaijan, when Max was comfortably in the lead just to have his tire blow up at 190 miles per hour on the straight. On the restart, Lewis would sense his chance to take some huge points off his opponent, but tragically forgot to turn off the magic button. This changes the brake balance to something like 90% to the front wheels, which is meant to heat up the front tires under a safety car. Lewis accidentally knocks this on during the start and ends up locking up and going off into the runoff area. This put him dead last, and he lost his opportunity to gain major points off his opponent and championship rival. Max would go on to win the next 3 races until the infamous British Grand Prix. Max secured pole position for the race, and now Lewis is sensing that this is going to be a monumental battle for the championship. They're in Silverstone for his home race, and he feels like he needs to fight more than ever. The old vet and the young gun start battling right off the bat, and with almost a full lap of clean hard racing until
Copse corner. These are critical corners for this Grand Prix.
Hamilton's going to try again, this time on the inside, and comes and then touch! Verstappen is out of the race, and that's a big crash!
Max gets thrown into the wall at 160 miles an hour. He impacts it with 51 G's of force, and Max would immediately get sent to the hospital, although he was up shortly after, walking around. You can tell this hurt. Lewis went on to win the race, and although he did ask if Max was okay after the crash, he refused to claim responsibility, and many felt his celebration after the win while Max was still in the hospital was kind of in poor taste. And honestly, I believe this was mostly a racing incident that could have had much more terrible consequences for the both of them. So I think they're both lucky to walk away with this. What didn't help the tensions was now that the media had their narrative, they were constantly instigating between the two. Either way, it was clear that the gloves were completely off. The next race at a wet Hungaroring did more to stoke the flames. We saw Valtteri Bottas, who's Lewis's teammate at the time, miss his braking point in the first turn and crashing into both Red Bulls, which was a rookie mistake. Max would eventually recover to 9th, but Lewis finished 2nd after a Sebastian Vettel DQ, and you could tell now things are definitely spiraling out of control. The drivers and their teams were at war, and now the media was eating it up. So it would be a nothing race in Spa, which was beautifully directed by my main man, Michael M. More about him later. Then Max would take one more win in Netherlands before F1 would go to the famous.
It is the Italian Grand Prix.
So the race starts, and they're already fighting hard, with Lewis getting pushed off in turn 4 or 5. This makes him lose place to Norris, and this would be sort of foreshadowing for what would occur later in the race. Max would go on to have a very slow pit stop on lap 24, and Lewis would overtake Norris ahead for the lead. Lewis would then pit 2 laps later, and he would have a slow stop as well, which meant that he would now be behind Lando Norris, but more critically, side by side with Verstappen going into turns 1 and 2. Lewis's tires are likely cold, while Max is going at the normal speed with warm brakes and tires.
And there's Max Verstappen right behind Hamilton into the first chicane. Once again, it's wheel to wheel. Hamilton and Verstappen, and this time Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out, and they are both out.
That's what you get when you don't leave the space.
So Max takes it outside for turn 1. With these F1 cars being so wide, they're trickier to position. Lewis didn't leave enough room for Max. So Max's front tire hits the curb, sends it into the air. Lewis, meanwhile, had been slowing down to make sure he can make the corner, while Max, his car, has been unsettled and up in the air. So Max's car is moving faster, and his rear right tire contacts Lewis's rear left, sort of walking itself up, throwing Max into the air again. This time he gets thrown to the right, and the rear right of his car lands square on the rollover hoop of Hamilton's. Max's rear right tire then proceeds to almost crush Lewis Hamilton's head in the car, and they end up on top of each other in the gravel.
Bruh.
We've seen both guys care about winning and points more than each other surviving at this point. Lewis would then take Lando's first win off him in Russia, and Max would win the next 2 out of 3 races until suddenly it's Brazil. There's 4 races left. Lewis had 293.5 points to Max's 312.5 points. If Lewis wants to win the championship, he's got to step it up in these last 4 races. The tension between the teams has reached a boiling point, and Red Bull suspects that there's something wrong with Mercedes' DRS system. Red Bull bring the wing to the attention of the FIA scrutineers, who employ a new testing method to see if when the DRS opens, it's the right size. Lewis's car fails by a tiny margin, and therefore he's disqualified. Max Verstappen, being curious himself, ends up touching the rear wing in Parc Fermé and lands a hefty fine for it. And it would be at this point that Lewis decides to say, fuck you, and have his most amazing drive of his career. He overtakes literally everybody on the grid and goes from last to finishing P5 in the sprint. He then takes a 5-place grid penalty because he needed to replace an engine component, meaning he would start 10th on the grid for the actual race. He then proceeded to absolutely terrorize the field, going from 10 to 6th in one lap.
From 10th is up to 6th.
Quickly dispatching the Ferraris.
He has cleared not one but 2 Ferraris now, and he's up into 4th place.
His teammate lets him through.
Bottas has let Hamilton through.
He has. Hamilton is up into 3rd place.
He then dominates both Red Bulls with pure pace.
Right, it's going to be round the outsides, and for the 2nd lap.
And overtakes Verstappen to win the race.
Hamilton pulls ahead of Verstappen. Before they get to the corner, the crowd go absolutely wild.
This must be one of Lewis's best drives. I've never seen so much determination, and I'm not even a Lewis fan, but watching him cut through the field like that was pretty special, I can't lie. Lewis would also take the next race in Qatar, making the total point for him 343.5 to Max's 351.5. That gap is getting pretty low going into the last 2 races of the season. In qualifying for Saudi, Lewis got provisional pole, beating Max's time by 1.5 tenths of a second with 1 minute left. Max started his lap and pushed like hell to take that back, and you can see here he almost taps this wall. And again, he was absolutely flying and was on for pole.
But Verstappen can spoil the Mercedes party and ruin that one too as he hits the wall right at the final corner. Max Verstappen hits the wall and pole position slides out of his grasp right at the end.
In the last corner, he just understeers, goes a little bit wide, and he still tries to get on the power to save the lap, and the track walls are unforgiving. And he clobbered that bitch, I'm not gonna lie. He does the right thing, immediately stops because the rear wheels are connected to the gearbox, and damage to that can mean no race for him tomorrow, which would not be good. Nevertheless, he starts 3rd on the grid while Jos Verstappen smashes his fist on the table. So in the race, during a safety car on lap 11, the Mercedes decide to pit, which would usually be a cheap pit stop for them, but then the race is red flagged. This means at the restart, Max, who was behind before the whole situation, will get to stay ahead of Lewis and still change tires under red flag. You can see a couple of times that Max seemed to be getting frustrated, and instead of yielding a position to Lewis, he would just drive both of them off the track. The FIA made him give this first one back to Hamilton at the 2nd restart. Later, after this egregious one, Max's race engineer, GP, is telling him to give Lewis the position back, strategically.
So let's give the position back to Hamilton. So do that strategically. Give the position back.
Oh, they've touched and they've collided! Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
He decides to do this in a pretty weird spot of the track and sort of brake checks Lewis. But Lewis, being confused, doesn't drive around Max and instead brakes and drives straight into the back. And so then Max takes off again, confused about why Lewis hasn't gone through. Tono's mad. Everyone's confused. Max then lets Lewis pass, but only right before the DRS zone. So Max gets to the DRS and then lunges down the inside of Lewis and takes the place right back. And the stewards didn't think this was sufficient to give up his lasting advantage, clearly. And so they handed Max a 5-second penalty. This wouldn't matter because Lewis would end up overtaking him on track to win the race anyway, bringing both to a dead even 369.5 points heading into the last race, meaning the championship would have to be decided next week, the last race. Something that has only happened 13 other times in F1 history.